And we should be live. Larry Johnson, my friend, how are you doing?
I think I'm alive. I'm talking, I'm breathing.
That's good.
Good signs. Good signs.
Good signs. Probably better signs than Ben Gurion Airport. What do you think?
Well, it disrupted traffic. It didn't do any significant damage. Unlike, Israel turned around and just apparently were claiming that they destroyed Yemen's airport. But, I think the Houthis will continue to fire back. And, Israel thinks it can kill its way out of this. We've said this repeatedly, and they can't.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing that I found very interesting was the comment from who was it? The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the United States that said that
You mean
Iran, as usual,
Marco Rubio?
Yeah, yes, I think it was him on Twitter.
Well, you said so. He's the Secretary of State. He's the equivalent of the Foreign Minister.
Yeah, blaming Iran for like we're seeing what you're doing there.
No, that was Pete. That was Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense.
Too many names. You have too many people working.
That's why you have me. That's why you invite me on to talk.
Exactly.
I can sort out who's who.
If I was able to do that, I could just do the program by myself.
Yeah, you wouldn't need me.
I need good people. But yeah, I mean, what I see today during this week, well, the last week I was kind of away. I've been to San Marino to visit another country, which is a hill. But I've been slightly away from everything. But I saw this, and all I've been seeing is a roller coaster, of escalation, de-escalation, and now it looks again that they are blaming Iran. At the same time that they are having talks. Again, Saturday there was some fire on a power plant. I didn't see the details on that.
No telling if it was an actual terrorist attack or what, but it didn't mean anything.
But what's going on with Iran and the United States and Israel? This, just Israel today was talking about taking Gaza completely. Doesn't matter. Let's just take Gaza. Again, the peace talks, the negotiations between the United States and Iran going forward, slightly, slowly, but looks like going forward. How do you see these movements, Larry?
Well, Israel's its actions are dictated by Bibi Netanyahu's political situation, and he is in trouble at home. And so one way to distract from that is to carry out offensive military operations overseas or in a outside or in adjacent territory. So, the Israeli claim now they're going to really, hurt Hamas. They've had 19 going on 20 months to do so. They failed. They failed to defeat a guerrilla force. It is not, Hamas is not a modern army. Doesn't have artillery. Doesn't have tanks. Doesn't have armored personnel carriers. Doesn't have helicopters or an air force. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capability. It's very limited. Sidearms, rifles, maybe some heavy machine guns. And some mortars. Other than that, Israel's got every single military advantage a country could have, except they haven't been able to defeat Hamas. And so now they're going to go in and try to totally occupy it. Great. More of these Zionist thugs will die. And as the body starts stacking up, then the political heat is going to grow and grow and grow on Netanyahu. And then at the same time they're doing that, they're trying to boost their military presence in Syria, and the tensions are escalating with Turkey. So all of a sudden now they've got to figure out how to staff really 4 different war efforts directly on the ground: Lebanon, Syria, West Bank, and Gaza. And they don't have an unlimited pool of reservists. They've got a limited pool. And those reservists, many of them are refusing to respond when called to duty. They said, no, we're done. We're burnt out. We've got jobs, families to take care of. We're not going to do it.
Another passport.
Yeah. So, I don't see this as in a good situation for Israel militarily. It's going to weaken them, not strengthen them. And then, Netanyahu keeps talking about wanting to attack Iran. If he does that, it will end up threatening the very existence of Israel, because Iran. I just watched a video with Dimitri, Escaladas. He broadcast, I think, out of the UK. But he is in Iran. I was invited to be on this trip. Pepe Escobar's there, Alistair Crook and his wife Asleen are there. And I wanted to go, but I had another commitment that I had made previously that I couldn't get out of. But Dimitri was at their aerospace museum yesterday, showing off the different ballistic missiles and the drones, the different kinds of drones they've had. And this wasn't the full revelation of all of their equipment. This was just showing you a sample, and it's significant. And with mobile launchers, and then also the display their own air defense system. They've got Russian S-400s, I believe, but they've also got their own robust system. So if Israel is dumb enough to choose to attack Iran will fend off that attack, and then they will retaliate against Israel in a way that Israel has never been hit. Never. And as we saw, the lesson of Ben Gurion from the Houthis is their ballistic missile got through. So even though they got the super THAAD system from the United States, and there's a theater high altitude anti-missile defense system, is I think what that THAAD stands for, and their Iron Dome failed. Both of them failed. And that was just against some Houthi missiles. They're described as hypersonic. They just travel very fast, but they're not maneuverable. And they're not terribly accurate either. We haven't seen any display of accuracy on the Houthi side. But it's still underscored that Israel has no defense against that. So we'll see what happens with Iran.
Yeah, I remember all my years reading about, the Iron Dome is the fantastic system. And suddenly I started to say, no. Iron Dome is something, but then you have the David's slingshot or whatever, and then you have the THAAD, and then and each one of these has its. Okay, so Iron Dome is not the big umbrella. You have different systems, but when you start to have to explain that, I have different systems for different cases, and none of them work.
Yeah,
looks like you're in trouble.
Well, I mean, most air defense systems are based. It's just like personal security. You build rings of security out. They're integrated. It's not one standalone that does everything. But clearly, the THAAD system is the one that's supposed to deal with the ballistic missiles, and it failed. Pure and simple. Yeah. Even Jack Keane, that incorrigible neoconservative maniac, he conceded that it failed.
Yeah, so things are, every now and then I have Lucas Leroy here, who is a Brazilian journalist. And one thing that he always points out is that, even though Iran has or doesn't have nuclear capabilities, Iran can destroy Israel without nuclear capabilities.
Yeah,
So,
they've got they can at least do significant damage. They can severely harm their military resources, knock out power plants, attack communication centers. So yeah, there's a lot of targets they could hit.
yeah. So moving a little bit away, I want to know about this gossip of Michael Waltz, who was promoted to the UN ambassador or something like that, right? What happened to
Promoted, not quite.
I was being jocose.
I know you've been facetious.
Facetious.
Yeah, why he got dumped. I can step back and say I don't know the true reason. All I can know is what we're told now in the press, and it's not so much what we were told in the press. It's that the press was used to tell the story that I think is significant, because it was sourced to senior White House aides. It looks like Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, even commented or gave an interview, or however you want to describe it. And it basically was this trashing Mike Waltz, with the main allegation being that he tried to sabotage or circumvent Trump and conspire with Bibi Netanyahu. So you can look at that as saying, oh, okay, so Trump is not necessarily in Netanyahu's pocket, because if he was in Netanyahu's pocket, then what's the big deal about Waltz talking to Netanyahu about attacking Iran? So that's sort of a positive sign. I'm sure there's some other dimensions to this, but Waltz went from being the guy who coordinated, who brought, he'd have to call Marco Rubio up and say, hey, Marco, you need to get this information to me. And he could call up Pete Hegseth at the Department of Defense and be, hey, get this information to me. John Ratcliffe at CIA, Tulsi Gabbard at DNI. He was the key player, at least in the bureaucracy, for coordinating all national security issues. But now he's going to be the UN ambassador. He answers to Marco Rubio. He's Marco Rubio's bitch. Marco Rubio tells him what to do. And then on top of it, to get that job, he's got to go through a confirmation process. Well, just the information that was out in this article alone is going to provide ammunition for people to attack him. I actually, I think they're looking for a way to get rid of him permanently, but make him be the one that pulls the plug, because he's going to come under such intense pressure. I think he'll have a lot of difficulty getting confirmed. I don't see the Senate as necessarily being a slam dunk at all. And if he gets another job offer where he can go make some money for some, wealthy neoconservative Zionist tycoon, then he'll do that. We'll see.
Yeah. Things not looking very good for him. He should take the offer, whatever it is.
I mean, he's gonna, he's gonna get questioned by the Republicans about, was it true that he, conspired with Bibi Netanyahu, Signalgate? Why did he lie about Jeffrey Goldberg? Whole host of questions.
Yeah, they put, probably they are going to put both signal gates on his account and remove Pete Hegseth from the equation. Just burn one and leave the rest alone. That's what sounds.
Again, this is it. I'll call it. It's a manufactured crisis. The fact, if they're using Signalgate every day, without telling the press about it, nobody would know about it, except the foreigners. It's not secure, but if these are supposedly smart people, they should know what should and shouldn't be talked about on an open line, essentially, even if it's end-to-end encrypted as WhatsApp claims to be.
Yeah, supposed smart people.
Yeah,
we should account for
that. They got degrees. They attended a college, university. They got degrees. In
That's all.
theory, you'd say, look, they got the credentials to indicate that they're smart, but the kind of intelligence we're talking about is like should have an enormous amount of common sense, which seems to be lacking.
Exactly. Larry, let's talk about some de-escalation now. China. How do you see the situation on the current tariff wars, Trump tariff wars with China? I mean, Trump started to play his poker game, calling the bluff. China called his bluff,
Yeah.
and then Trump at some point said, "Hey, okay, let's remove tariffs from these articles, electronics, all that." And now China looks like China has removed tariffs from some articles that she also needs. How do you see the development of the situation on that line, on that direction?
Well, it's not Trump's goal is to break China and force China to come begging for relief, and China's not going to do that. Real simple. The China would rather take the economic hit and have millions of people out of work, but they'll blame it on the United States. Hey, we didn't do this to you. This was a economic Pearl Harbor against us. We were attacked. So now that we know the nature of the enemy, we're going to have to build up our forces to protect ourselves. This is, I think it's an incredibly stupid policy by Trump. Very counterproductive. There are more diplomatic ways to approach the Chinese and to obtain, what's our objective? Is our objective to return manufacturing jobs to the United States? Okay, well, one of the main reasons that doesn't happen is because the US dollar is the reserve currency. And by virtue of being the reserve currency, it's going to make any kind of at least low-level manufacturing almost impossibly expensive. So the United States has got to make a choice. Are we going to continue to be the reserve currency and try to control the world financially? But that means we're going to continue to hollow out, destroy our own industrial base. Or are we going to, change and recognize some of these changes may take years? Yeah, they can't be accomplished overnight or in a month or two or in a year or two.
Two things that I think is very important on this case. One, I was thinking about it, and the tariffs, protectionism is not per se a bad thing. Every country do some protectionism on his industry, his economy, but you don't put tariffs on countries. You put tariffs perhaps on products, on certain segments of the industry, or agriculture. It's
Yeah, it's targeted. It's most effective if they're targeted. If you're trying to grow or protect your beef industry, then you put tariffs on beef coming from China. Not that there is any. It's just I think the flow is the exact opposite. But to do this just across the board punishment of China is viewed correctly so by the Chinese as an act of hostility, an act of war, albeit an economic warfare, but it's still an act of war. So then you have to step back and say, okay, what do we need to do to protect ourselves? China will react to this in ways that I don't think the West has anticipated. The parallel is what we saw take place with NATO, its growth, and then Russia's ultimate reaction said, okay, they're coming after us. We're going to have to prepare. And now look, NATO, despite having 28 countries or more as members, are outmatched by one country, Russia.
Yeah, and that should be another escalation on this roller coaster.
Yeah.
We just had some attacks on Crimea with storm shadows. Pointed out that's probably United States surveillance and information. uh, what is in the mind of these people? Do they think that Europe's going for that, and the United States just going to save face on it? Do you, how do you think they're watching these things? Because I just don't understand.
Well, who?
You know, the United States.
But you said they. How are they watching this? What do you mean?
How do you think the United States is perceiving this, escalation by the British or the Europeans? And do they believe that they are just going to save face because, yeah, now we're having talks with, with Russia, and Russia is just going to blame Europe on everything and leave us behind? How do you see this escalation with Russia? It looked we were going on the right path for once.
Again, Trump is failing to understand, appreciate, comprehend Russia's position. Russia's been very, very clear. Since June 14th of 2024, their position is not only is it, I can't say it's unchanged, because becoming stricter. They're going to take more territory. Up to this point, they said, okay, look, well, the 4 oblasts that are now part of the Russian Federation, 4 former Ukrainian oblasts, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, those are now permanently part of Russia. If the Ukrainians and the United States, they fail to take this deal as it is this on the table now, they're going to take Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, Poltava, and Kharkiv. There'll be 4 more oblasts that will fall under the control of Russia, that will control the vast natural resources that the West is lusting to get control of. So Trump and company, they I don't know what he says to Putin in private. All I can go on is based on what he says in public. He doesn't get it, and they think they've really got leverage over Russia, which is insane. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was at a conference yesterday, and he commented on the fact that this deal, they call it the rare earths mineral deal, actually there's probably a couple of other agreements attached to it that have not become public. But he said the real reason is they're showing that there's now no daylight between the United States and Ukraine in order to get leverage with Russia. Well, Russia already knew that. They knew that the United States was the instigator of this war, the major instigator of this war. And that Donald Trump wants to pretend that he didn't have anything to do with this? Nonsense. It was under Trump's first term that the Ukrainian military increased in size by a factor of 4, quadrupled in size. It was under Trump that they started getting lethal weapons in the form of Javelin missiles to go after tanks. It was under Trump that Ukraine with NATO began carrying out offensive military exercises, anti-submarine warfare, amphibious warfare, and that it was under Trump that the B-52 flew along the coast of Crimea. All of this was actions to provoke, to embarrass, to rub the face of Russia in the dirt, if possible. And so, and then the United States completely rejected under Biden the peace proposals that Vladimir Putin brought forward. So here's all we need. You got to address our concern about the creeping expansion of NATO towards our borders. That's got to stop. And the United States says, screw off. We're going to do whatever the hell we want. And what are you going to do about it? Okay, Russia's showing you what they're going to do about it. They're going to crush Ukraine. And in the process of crushing Ukraine, they're going to drain NATO of military resources. And they've also expanded their missile technology with weapon systems that nobody in Europe has, and that every major city in Europe is vulnerable to be hit by the Oreshnik missile. So,
which, by the way, was a consequence of another treaty that Trump moved away from, right?
Right. Yeah.
Was it Trump? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Trump.
Yeah, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement in 2018, I believe.
So yeah, Trump is getting consequences from Trump. That's awesome. Just
Yeah,
go
it's
ahead.
just no, it's unfortunate. Trump is he's missing opportunities where he could have been consequential for the right reasons. He's going to be historic president for the wrong reasons. He can keep telling himself, "Oh, I'm the best. I'm the greatest." Unlike Muhammad Ali. I mean, that was Muhammad Ali's shtick. I'm so pretty. Nobody dare touch my face. He would do. He had a wonderful voice and a lilt. But man, he'd go out and do it. He could perform. Trump, big talk, big mouth, but not a lot of action. Or we've seen it over and over. Oh, I'm going to release all the files. Where are they? Well, they're hung up.
Yeah. Where's the Epstein files, by the way? Do we have something?
Yeah, no, they're sitting on them. There are too many prominent Republicans that are going to be embarrassed. Enough Democrats that they can blackmail into supporting Trump. They're going to use it.
Exactly. Larry, I have one last question to get you out of here. It's about your perception inside the United States. How do you see the situation inside the United States economy? Grocery going to places.
But so far,
overall?
There's no visible sign yet of a recession. That things have run into trouble. The opposition to Trump, I think Trump has lost some support, but it's not irretrievable. But if he goes down the road of conflict with Russia and with Iran and with China, then he'll lose. He can't win that fight.
Yeah. All right. Larry, remember everybody to follow Larry on sonar21.com. It's not here, but the link's on the description. You all know the drill. Like, share, subscribe to the channels, all channels. Get Larry on Countercurrents, on Nima, Dialogue Works, Through the Eyes of Ania K, Judge Napolitano, of course, every Friday and Monday, and Danny Davis every now and then as well. Plus everything that he posts on sonar21.com. Don't forget to. And tomorrow I'm going to have a very special guest, Larry.
Who is it?
Doubt you can. I'm gonna keep you curious until tomorrow. Don't miss, everybody.
All right.
5 o'clock Central Europe time, 12 o'clock Brazil time, 11 o'clock for you.
Oh,
I'll
Alex,
send you the link.
it must be Alex Craner.
It's an Alex, but it's not Craner. Not this time.
Mercuros.
No, the other one.
Cristoforo.
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Great VIP tomorrow.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, Larry, once again. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.